Scott here with Email Hero side of things. And so, Scott, let's just jump right into it. I mean, I'm hearing lots of discussion and chatter now about emails not being received from wineries who haven't, as it turns out, been emailing their list since November and December. Sometimes nobody's around, or it's they've got nothing to say, and so now they're just starting to get going. Easter, Happy Easter, that kind of thing, which is just passed.
Yeah.
And so, why would that be happening? Why are people not receiving the emails that they're sending out in that situation?
Yeah. So, great question. It's a very common dilemma from a lot of businesses that they take a break from their email marketing, and then they've got something to promote, and then they decide that they're going to blast their entire list, and then they start to have all kinds of problems, right? So obviously the rule of thumb is you really want to be consistently and regularly emailing your list, right? um, it's very important that you schedule out communication. So even if you're going to be gone, or if there's a busy time, that you're not able to actually write regular emails, that you kind of pre-schedule those to go out. That's where the power of automation can come into play. But if you're starting to experience problems by sending out emails right now, and you're saying, hey, some people aren't getting them, this is where you really need to start looking at your list, pretty closely. And so you want to start doing things in batches, small groups of emails. So I would say, kind of start off with maybe, a group of 50 to 100, and send that email out, see what type of engagement that you actually get. And then the next day, then you can start bumping that up the next day, so on and so forth, until you start to get more engagement from your overall list that you have.
Right. And so so this would be in this situation where somebody hasn't been emailing on a regular basis. And so that engagement is really critical, because let's talk about the rules, right? So
Yep.
we've spoken about the email rules. We know that the big three are really trying to prevent spammers and big bulk sends. That's why this concept of blasting your list is not a good idea. So what should we group them together by domain? Should we look at them by engagement? People that purchased in the last 3 months, 6 weeks. How do we break down and start looking at those groups? Because that's equally important
Yep.
as just breaking it down and going, oh, clumps of 50. But can we do something within that group of 50 to identify them and segment them so we have a much more impactful trickle, warm up, that process?
Yeah. So obviously, this goes back to a conversation that we've had previously. You really want to be dividing your list up into different types of groups. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that, right? Maybe it's, the type of wine that they like, the most recent that they purchased, the frequency of purchase, the amount of purchase. There's a lot of different things that you can use to segment your list, and you could segment, somebody by multiple categories. If you're doing that, that's going to allow this process to be made easier, right? If you haven't been doing that, now's the time to actually do that work, right? There's no getting around it. The challenge is going to be, you can't really look at engagement, though, if you haven't emailed them since November or December,
Right.
right? Because the numbers that you have there just really aren't going to be that accurate, because it's been what, 5 or 6 months, that these people haven't engaged. If you have data where you can look at, well, how were they engaging prior to our point of stopping, that will help you. If they were engaging, within the last 30 days of sending that last email, they engaged within that 30-day time frame, that would be a great group to send to immediately, for sure. If you wanted to, if you have the capability and you can say, hey, I'm going to send out emails to people with this domain for their email address, I would recommend sending it to Gmail addresses. So
Yeah.
gmail.com, because Gmail is more sender friendly than Microsoft and Yahoo. Not to say that you can't get in trouble with them, but it's going to be a lighter slap if you do happen to get slapped by them.
Right. And the key point there in really what we're talking about is it's from an email perspective, much like we've been talking with Paul in segmenting to create lists in Facebook, and the other day where we were talking about Sharon, making sure we understand who our audience is, and we understand that there are certain requirements and rules around all of this stuff. When it comes specifically to emails, we have these rules, and for those of you who haven't are just new to Heroes and new to this discussion we're having around emails, just want to excuse me, just want to reiterate and restate something. So when we talk about the big three, we're talking about Google, right, with their Gmail platform. And so within Gmail, you're going to have .gmail.com or at gmail.com. But also, for those of you who don't know, Gmail also allows for business domains. So as an example, DTC marketingheroes.com is a Gmail or a Google-based email domain. The same holds true with Microsoft. So Microsoft will have, several. They'll have Hotmail. They'll have Microsoft Outlook. What's one of the other ones? MSN. And then also when we look at Yahoo, they're also going to have their domain. So we have to be careful and mindful of that. So Scott, what I heard then is if I can go and segment out in my list and identify, let's say as an example, that first 50, we're looking for Gmail, right? That's the easiest identification.
Yep.
Then we're looking for Gmail for people who have purchased, say, in the last 60 days.
Yeah.
That would be a good group of people to email. And so that would be your first 50. And
Yep.
now you've emailed that 50 out. What are you watching for?
So you're watching their engagement of those emails. Are they opening? Are they clicking on the links in that email? Are you getting a bunch of spam complaints because you haven't communicated with them for a while?
Right.
Are you getting a lot of bounces on those emails because maybe people have changed their email address or whatever? Those are the key things that you really want to monitor. And if you've got very low numbers on any of those categories, then you're going to be safe to start increasing that number. So day number 2, you could do it to a group of 100 or 200. Day number 3, you can then double that until you get through your entire list.
Right. And so if I were to look at the list from say 2022, so let's use the scenario that you went through all of October, November, December, OND period. You've done all that marketing, and then you've put everything kind of on hold until the new year. Teams coming back, promotions are coming back, tourists are coming back, and so on. So if in that October, November period, we saw that there was no engagement for a segment of people, would you add them to this warm up sequence?
I would not at this point in time. You want to get the people who have been most actively engaged with your emails, re-engaging with them. That way you're going to start to be in the good graces of Microsoft, Google, and Yahoo once again. And then maybe in a month or 2 months, now you can start lightly filtering in these people who haven't been engaging, for some time. And
Right.
I will say too, when it comes to this warm up, don't send an email of buy my stuff, right? That's not the first email somebody wants to get when they haven't heard from you for 4, 5, or 6 months, right?
Right.
I mean, that's like, somebody, that you've gone out on a date with, 6 months ago, they stopped communicating with you and all that. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, they show up and they're like, hey, let's go out on a date again.
Right.
It's like, oh no, let's not. Let's kind of like rekindle that relationship. So start to send things of value. And here's something that will relate with your audience. Acknowledge your silence.
Yep.
Acknowledge your silence. And I would dare say, even apologize for it. Say, hey, we're so sorry. We haven't been regularly communicating with you. We really appreciate you as a customer, of somebody who's been doing business with us. We just got so busy. We needed some time off, whatever the case may be. But say, hey, we're here. We're going to stay. We want to continue building this relationship with you. That will go a long ways. And especially if you can then lead them to something of value that's maybe on your website. So maybe
Right.
you've got some pictures from the holidays that you can post up there and say, "Hey, we had so much fun. We wanted to share, this library of videos and photos that we took. Go check them out." Just something fun and lighthearted, rather than, "Oh, go check out this new wine," or "Go buy this
Yeah.
this thing," or "Sign up for this event."
Yeah, one of the things I've seen is people are starting to talk about, and hey, here's what's happening. Spring's coming, and so they're taking photos of the spring awakening of the
Yeah.
vines, of the vineyard, depending on what's happening in your zone, if you will, your growing zone.
Hmm.
So I know some of the northern wineries are starting to see a little bit of that. West Coast is that's already been going. So if you're on the West Coast and you can segment out that you've got clients on the East Coast, maybe send them some photos of spring flowers because we still don't have any yet. That kind of stuff, right? And or some interesting article or a some way of recipes or any of that kind of stuff. So that's where that value add comes in, and that's what you're doing there also is you're training them, the recipient, that they're not going to get blasted with
Hmm.
promos and offers. You're actually coming to it with a plan of approach. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna that kind of now leads into this next little bit here is um, over the course of the next, say, 2 months, 3 months, is to develop an email marketing plan that coincides with your social media plan, your blog posts, and all that stuff. And so you're repurposing. And so, Scott, just to remind people, once you've got the list back and it's warmed up, and you're beginning to email on a regular basis, and you are monitoring the contacts that are not engaging, and you're pulling them out, how frequently would you recommend emailing your list?
So the best recommendation is that you're emailing your list at least once a week.
Right.
At
At
least
least.
once a week. You can get by if you're providing lots of value. You can get by with emailing them 2 or 3 times a week, and people will not mind that, right?
Right.
So I recommend at minimum once a week. If you are absolutely resistant to that, maybe you don't have the time right now to devote to a weekly email. Maybe you're just afraid that you're really going to tick off your audience because you haven't been communicating with them, and maybe you've only communicated with them once a month. You're like, man, if I really ramp up my communication, they're going to unsubscribe. Okay, and that's a real fear. I would say at minimum twice a month,
Right.
every other week.
Right.
Anything less than that really shouldn't even be emailing at all. Like, honestly, if you're only emailing people once a month, stop emailing. Just go with social media, go with direct mail, do something different, because it's not helping you when you're only emailing once a month.
And when you
Um,
say helping, what's the thing? Because there's a technical reason why we need to be doing this, let alone an engagement and a connection with our audience. But there's a technical reason that we need to be emailing on a regular basis, and that goes back to the rules. So, in this public section for everyone that's joining, let's just wrap up here. But what is that? What's the technical component of why we want to do that?
yeah, I mean, it's just really because it's your reputation.
Yeah.
It's your reputation, and you've got to stay in the good graces of Microsoft, Google, and Yahoo.
Very
And
nice.
if you're not emailing consistently, regularly, and frequently, one minor mishap can really damage your reputation.
Yeah.
If you're emailing only once a month and you get enough spam complaints, yikes, now you're in serious trouble. So that reputation is really, really important.
And so when we look at the count, and thanks for that, Scott, because I think a lot of people miss that portion of the discussion, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to balance this rules-based requirement from the big three to ensure that we're on a regular basis, we are basically engaging with our clients, our recipients of our emails. On the flip side is we're also trying to balance the needs and the expectations of our recipients. So a
Yep.
couple of things to do in that space is, as you're going through and inviting people to sign up for your newsletter, if that's what you're doing, explain to them up front that you send weekly content on these X
Yep.
number of topics. That's number one. Number two is give the recipient a way to opt out of receiving. And I'm going to make this up, but let's say once a month you send an email specifically around recipes, okay, and food pairings, and they're not interested in that. Fine, perfect. Let them opt out of that portion of your communication strategy and potentially fill that in with something else. And so what that does is it not only gives them the control to receive what they want, but you can also now really dial in your segmentation. So
Mm-hmm.
now, Scott, kind of question there just popped into my head. So me, Mark, your winery, you're sending to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you have to send me 4 emails a month, once a week, or do you have to send everybody on the list? And if I opted out for, let's say, the food pairing email, I'm only getting 3, but everyone else is getting 4. How does that play into the conversation?
Yeah, obviously, the more people that you have getting more emails from you, the better.
Right,
But that's not to say that everybody has to receive the exact same number of emails. Okay.
right, right.
Now, I will say, if you've got a large portion of your list that they're only getting 1 email a month, that's negatively offsetting the people who are getting a weekly email, right?
Okay.
So you kind of have to have that balance. You have to maintain that balance. And this goes to the point that a lot of times as small business owners, we get pigeonholed into thinking, well, we only have one thing that we can communicate.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we have multiple things that we can communicate, because we've got a lot of different people that make up our audience. Does it take time to create that content? Absolutely. Are
Yep.
there ways to fast track that? Absolutely. We've been talking about it in the Group Heroes call, right?
Right.
The mastermind, where we're talking about using AI for those types of things. But if you can, create some fun stuff that are the wine pairings and the recipes, a large swath of your audience is going to be interested in that. But
Yep.
then maybe you're going to have segmented things on, okay, this is all about red wine. Um, this is all about white wine. These are all about events. Certain people are not going to be interested in those things. So they're going to say, no, don't send me those types of emails. Well, that's okay, because now you've got 4, 5, or 6 things that they can choose from, and many people will be interested in multiples of those.
So we're gonna wrap up on this part, then we're gonna jump into the members only section. But there's a couple of sections that we've been talking about at a couple of the wineries I'm coaching with, and different ways and methods to draw in some of your vendors to help create content.
Yeah.
So I'll tease you there. But your action step right now, for those of you who aren't members yet, your action step is to look at your list, and not like, don't today or tomorrow plan and send out an email, but think about what are you going to be doing over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks, and plan out that marketing content calendar. And then that's step one, is to plan that out. Step two then is to, over the course, and depending on how big your list is, over the course of the next 5 to 10 days, is to look at and segment out your list. So if you don't have Heroes plan, where you have all of this automatically tagged and segmented for you in your email provider, one of the ways to do that is to export out your list and look at all the last engagements. So it's going to have a date typically on engagement, which emails they've clicked on. So that's one, but it's also going to have their email address. And so you can use in Excel, there's a way to divide your in the data section within Excel, you can take the email address and you can split that into multiple columns, and you can still sort out just for Gmail. So you go at gmail.com. And what that'll do is it'll give you the opportunity to tag all of your contacts who are just email. So that's one way to sort out that. Or depending on what platform you're using, you may be able to filter as well emails ending in at gmail.com. So that's something to do. And now you've got that first portion, then you've got your engagement rate. And so that's what you need to be doing over the course of the next 6 weeks. At time of recording, we are the 10th of April. So, you want to have this done by May, right? By the end of April, this task should be done, so that going into May, June, July, August, you've got a really healthy list that is active and engaging with you. So that's really your action step for today. And if you have any questions, as always, drop them in the comments. Drop them down below in the chat. And for those of you who are members, we'll see you in a minute. We'll just say goodbye to our friends here. So let's do that now. And that one, Heroes Public, and that one's gone. That one. That one. Okay, and we are still going there. Save. Perfect.